welcome to the stage Megan Kim, Senior Vice President, Membership Development and Marketing at the Greater Cleveland Partnership.
Thank you. All right. Well, good evening. Wow, you're a good class. You quieted very quickly. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us at the 2024 Best of Tech Day. This year's event features the Best of Tech Awards and more than 25 organizations offering tech programming for the regional ecosystem. I hope you had the chance to go into our networking event here today, and it looked like it was very, very crowded. But today we're going to begin our program with something that we're all a little bit excited about. We're going to have a tech unicorn conversation with Steve Potash, who is the president and CEO of OverDrive, and GCP's president and CEO, Baiju Shah. Tonight we celebrate 18 years of this event, a program that we created to recognize and honor the leaders, innovators, companies, and organizations who are supporting, advancing, and building our region's tech sector. It's a day to celebrate and inspire all of you in this room. At the Greater Cleveland Partnership, it is our mission to build a great region on a great lake, a place where businesses thrive, a place where talent wants to live, work, and play, a place that's constantly focused on what's next. And every one of you in this room plays a key role in helping us to attain that objective and that mission. Building and nurturing a thriving tech economy is part of that mission. To talk more about how we, all in, can help achieve that goal, I want to welcome to the stage Baiju Shah, President and CEO of the Greater Cleveland Partnership, who will say a few thoughts about Cleveland's growing and diverse tech economy before sitting down and delving deeper into our tech unicorn conversation. So please join me in welcoming Baiju to the stage.
All right. Thank you, Megan. It's great to see so many of you with us here this afternoon. And I love being in this venue and not having to talk about football. So, not talking about football. We're not going to talk about what happens on the field, off the field, or where the field is going to be. But I'm sure some of you probably have opinions on these topics, and feel free to approach us afterwards, and we can at least hear your perspectives and maybe share some things about what's going on behind the scenes as we think about how to deal with what is a major opportunity for our region. As Megan said, tonight's a night that we like to celebrate what all of you are doing in our region. You know, we talk about this region a lot and where this region has been. We like to say that innovation is in our DNA. If you think about the history of Greater Cleveland, it's all about innovation. It's a region that powered literally the Industrial Revolution. That innovation, that inventive spirit is once again being expressed today through enterprises throughout our Greater Cleveland. This is why in the past year, Greater Cleveland was ranked 4th in the Midwest for overall business growth. It's because of innovation that is once again powering how companies operate and powering how companies produce and serve customers around the world. And you guys know the saying in tech, every business is a tech business. If you don't know that you're a tech business, you're likely going out of business. And we believe that to be true throughout Greater Cleveland. And the corollary to that is almost every worker is a tech worker. We are blessed that we have over 50,000 tech workers across Greater Cleveland. We've got one of the largest collections of tech workers throughout the Great Lakes area, more than many of our nearby cities. And they are represented in the firms that all of you are with us here tonight, enterprise tech to pure tech companies. Now, for those of you that track tech, one of the things that we like to celebrate in tech in particular are unicorns. How many of you know what a unicorn is in the tech world? Okay, a couple of you know about half of you know what unicorns are. Unicorns are defined as privately held tech companies that have grown to the point where they are valued over $1 billion in market value. Over $1 billion. So we celebrate these types of companies. These are the companies that always get sort of the headlines, whether they're in consumer tech or business tech, and they are celebrated because they have done something that is inspiring to entrepreneurs throughout not just the country, but throughout the world, and that they've really hit that scaling point. What we've also learned is that when you have more than one unicorn, you've got a herd of unicorns. And the name for a herd of unicorns is actually called a blessing. It's a real thing. So if you have a lot of unicorns, if you see a lot of unicorns out there, they're called a blessing of unicorns. We're blessed in Greater Cleveland because we started thinking about this saying, I wonder how many unicorns we've got right here in Greater Cleveland. Because too often we don't really toot our own horns. We don't talk about what's going on in our region, and we want to make sure that at Greater Cleveland Partnership, we change that and bring a spotlight to those of you that are doing amazing things for our region and for our world. That's a little bit of what Best of Tech is about tonight. We've got a blessing of unicorns. When we did our analysis, we found a half dozen unicorns sitting around Greater Cleveland. They're companies that you probably know, like Highland Software and MRI Software, companies that are relatively new to the scene, like a Key Factor, Park Place Technologies, and tonight's featured speaker, Steve Potash and the company OverDrive. It's my pleasure now to welcome Steve Potash, the founder and CEO of OverDrive, to the stage to join us. This is one of, the music. Steve, your walk-up music.
Thank you. Thank you.
Steve, for those of you that don't know, Steve is both the founder and CEO of OverDrive. OverDrive operates in over 115 countries around the world, bringing the world of information and content to all of us digitally. Steve and I are going to be having a conversation where we talk about his story and how it is that he started with an idea and grew it to a company that is worth multiple billions of dollars here in Cleveland. But before I start, and I think it's good for us to know a context in this crowd, how many of you have heard of OverDrive? Okay, this is good. This is better than most business audiences in Cleveland. We've got about 2/3 of you who've actually heard of this company. So we're going to talk a little bit about this company. Steve, let's start with the origins. Well, let's talk a little bit about what OverDrive is, because there's a third of the room that doesn't know what OverDrive is. So why don't we start with dimensions? Give us a little bit of what is OverDrive today, and then we'll go back to the origin story.
Well, thank you, Baiju, and thank to GCP, all the sponsors and participants. I really enjoyed networking with the folks earlier, but in response to your question, although I like the intro, thank you very much. You said multi-billions. Don't let my board hear that. Right now, I know we may have crossed over one, but let's keep their expectations. Manage expectations is a golden rule. So when there are takeaways, that's one of them. But as far as the beginning, so I'm a native, born and raised here, as is the other co-founder who happens to be here today. Wave your hand, Lori Potash. So Lori Potash and I both met in high school here. We're a mixed marriage. I went to Cleveland Heights High School, and she went to Brush in South Euclid-Lyndhurst. But I was always an entrepreneur. So even in junior high and high school, along with my brothers and friends, we were always cooking up some schemes, whether it was selling candy bars out of my locker or getting an early printing press and trying to work for our friends' parents, printing wedding invitations or whatever. I mean, we just were always trying to find ways to just put a few dollars in my pocket, quite frankly, because both my parents were Holocaust survivors. My mother came over as an orphan, lived in orphanages and foster homes, and then graduated from the Cleveland Heights High School. And so with my siblings, we weren't really given a choice. My folks worked multiple jobs. I was born in the city of Cleveland, so we were going to make it work, and we did. So as an entrepreneur, getting my undergraduate degree from Ohio State University, I studied journalism. I wanted to walk out with a skill, so I figured writing and learning to report would be helpful. But I specialized in marketing and promotion with that talent, and I'm going to speed up.
Yep.
But what was critical was I graduated, came back to Cleveland, started one or two additional startups, and got very frustrated immediately with the legal system and the contracts and raising money. So I said, you know what? Cleveland State University has an amazing law school program where you can get your JD going to law school at nights. So I immediately signed up. This was after a year of doing some startup and some businesses. I said, I'm going to continue with this business, but I'm going to get my legal education at night. Maybe this will be another, tool in my toolkit for just starting and growing and running a business. And after signing up for law school and seeing the books and the reading, I said, Lori, you got to sign up. You got to go to law school. This is too much reading. I was the entrepreneur. She was the A student. So she signed up at law school. We both went to law school at nights. And as an entrepreneur going to law school at nights, I was still starting business. They changed the law in the Ohio Rules of Civil Procedure, and I was always into media and playing with sound systems and tape recorders, going back to my dad's reel-to-reel stuff. So when I saw they changed the law in the Ohio Rules of Civil Procedure, that anyone who was a notary could tape record court proceedings, depositions, have them transcribed and affirmed, I say, oh, here in Cleveland, we opened up one of the first digital electronic stenography businesses called Legal Electronic Recording. So I'm operating businesses, I'm going to school at night, and lo and behold, I graduate past the bar, and Lori, we're starting our family with kids. I said, well, I got this law license now. I'd like to take this out for a spin. I mean, I should be signing up for some assigned cases, which I did, criminal court, juvenile, guardian ad litem. And then I started hustling all my friends who went into their businesses and, wound up, hung up my shingle as a sole practitioner and started to practice law. And it was really, you don't know how one thing will lead to the other. Two things happened during that early practice of law. I had a gentleman who had to find me because with my undergraduate degree, I was starting to write articles for the American Bar Association Journal. And I started write in the early 80s, mid-80s, a column, and they called me the PC lawyer because I was one of the first practicing attorneys that figured out how to configure some off-the-shelf software, some Rube Goldberg macro languages, and I was using this early single-sided 160K floppy diskette PC. I basically was operating this total law office. But, tracking my time and database management of client and managing, dates, I was really more interested in the productivity on the front of the house. Mm-hmm. And so I started to question myself, what if I could take all the legal books, the contracts, the forms, the pleadings, and ingest the information from all the practice books? What if we could make this thing that I could then automate the productivity of generating demand letters, contracts, pleadings, bankruptcy filings? And we did. And in that routine, which in the 80s would have been early AI, I was awarded a patent for a process that was allowing a system to look at complex transactions and extract all the unique variables, build the rule-based dependencies. At the end of the day, I said, with my tech, I should go to the publishers. So I went to Minneapolis, St. Paul, to West Publishing, yep, the largest law publisher. I said, with your content and this technology, I envision the future of practicing law will be on the screen. Instead of having to find the law books, because this is the problem I was trying to solve. And we signed our first licensing deal with West Publishing, and in the 80s, we developed a series of hundreds, way too early, electronic law books on 5 1/4 floppy diskettes.
So this is the start. This is the start of OverDrive. You started as a reformed lawyer, looking for opportunity, looking to get out of the billing side of it and saying there's got to be an easier way.
More an entrepreneur with a law license, I would say.
Entrepreneur with a law license.
Yeah, I would say that's a better description. The fact that I got to pursue, be careful what you ask for, because when I first got that license, I want to try a medical malpractice case. I want to do a murder case. I did all of those things, and several of them still haunt me today. So the practice of law is a pretty serious business. And while I was practicing law and while I was starting this startup, one other thing, because you mentioned our good friends at Highland Software. It was in the early 90s that I got a call from a gentleman by the name of Packy Highland Sr. Mm-hmm. He goes, me and my son started this little software company. We got this product called OnBase. We need a lawyer in town that knows something about software. So Packy Jr. and Packy Sr., I met with them, and for about 6, 7 years, I served as their in-house counsel. I did it part-time. They were starting up and building their business. Packy's first application was building a solution for savings and loan in Lakewood. And it was a really exciting time here in Cleveland. I would say in the early 90s, there's several in this room. I saw Gabe Torek back there from Preemptive and several friends, because we were trying to build an early software tech community in Cleveland in the early 90s.
Yeah.
And let's just say there was no Highland software. There was no OverDrive. So, but that's how the whole thing got started. And once we determined that there was a really valuable role in the supply chain to create a service for those that own this intellectual property, that own the content of the books, the law books, the tax, the accounting books, and creating this new future of accessing that in a digital way, anytime, anywhere. It's pretty exciting beginnings for us.
So you're starting in the professional services space.
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about how you started to expand into what we know of OverDrive today.
Well, once we demonstrated success automating how legal professionals could get access and be more productive with the content in a digital format. And by the way, this is also really before even Westlaw and LexisNexis was popular. This was during the day of 14K dial-up modems with acoustic couplers.
Yeah.
So very early. So when we were digitizing law books and bringing them into the office on the screen, it was pretty revolutionary. But we say if we could do it for law, and law was an evergreen market. You sell the books every year. They always need to buy subscriptions and new editions. Right. It's not like one and done. So if you ever want to get into any form of publishing, think travel, think tax guides, think SAT test prep, it's evergreen. Every year you get to resell the same product. So I said, if we could do law, why don't we go to talk to the tax? So I went to CCH. We wound up doing CPA for John Wiley & Son. Tax and accounting. Well, once we did that, now in the early 90s, things were migrating all to CD-ROM. Started floppies. You really want to install that Black's Law Dictionary in 1988. Yeah. You had to hand feed 28 floppy diskettes, one at a time, in order to load the single program into the TSR memory. Right. Yeah. You had a bad disk by disk number 25. You just really want to... Really. So this was about 10 years before there was really any market for what we were bringing. But then law, tax, accounting. In the early mid-90s, CD-ROM started to proliferate. Right. And now this was great. Ooh, this shiny disk. You could put lots of stuff on here. Windows was introduced. We could do colors. We could do pictures. We could do video. So that's when we started first going into the educational market. Many of you, if you went to college in the 90s and you spent a lot of money on that required textbook, had a CD-ROM in the back. And that CD-ROM was all the supplemental materials. It could be spreadsheets or exercises. OverDrive was building all these down in, Beechwood or Valley View or now in, and we still do that. We still have legacy CD-ROM businesses that are, still going after we sold, a university. Some are just using it for archive. Yeah. So if you sell a university library, they still want to know if your cloud service is down. So that led, but the real excitement kind of came when in the late 90s and early 2000, with our team, we started experiencing what might a consumer experience be? Because the real beginnings of the reading on the screen or the long-form reading of an e-book or audiobook, the kind of early adopter became 2007 when Amazon introduced the Kindle. So 2007 with an e-ink device. By the way, 7-9 years ago, we had launched with Microsoft, Sony e-reader, Pocketbook, Rocketbook.
Yeah. I'm going to pull you back from 2007 because I want to talk about the early years and some of your early investors. You and I had a conversation about one of your probably most famous early investors, and I wanted to see if you could share that with the crowd in terms of how you got that phone call, how you made the pitch, why you took the money, and why you gave it back.
Well, there's been a tremendous support from the Cleveland community for OverDrive's journey, But in 1980s and 1990s, you couldn't find anyone who would write a check. Now, if I was putting up a strip mall or a multi-apartment building, yeah, I know who to ask. You can, in the 80s and 90s, and even the early stage private equity and venture in town. Mm-hmm. But while we were investing in the early law book business, and this started, we introduced the first legal software products. We then built a utility, which was an add-on for the legal market called OverDrive. OverDrive for WordPerfect, which followed OverDrive for WordStar. Anybody remember WordStar by MicroPro?
Wow.
Created by Seymour Rubinstein, the father of kind of consumer word processing. His early mail merge, this is where, but WordPerfect had owned the market. WordPerfect by the late 80s, early 90s with Novell Networks was the de facto standard when you moved off the dedicated word processors, Lanier, Wang, and the predecessor.
How many remember WordPerfect? Okay, more remember WordPerfect. All right, so now.
All right.
So you got OverDrive.
So we have this we're building electronic law libraries and productivity tools for lawyers. And we had this add-on that was selling in egghead software. Babbage's, shrink wrap boxes that we used to ship from Cleveland to put on retail store shelves. Right. We really like this internet thing. We're really glad it's here. This is a lot better. So that was going on, and it was early 90s. I get a call from the office of Bill Gates saying, Bill would like to have lunch with Steve. Is he available to come up to Redmond? I said, I'll take that meeting. And
good judgment.
Thank you.
Yep.
With a lot of excitement, it was an invitation to get a briefing on how Microsoft was planning to enter a personal productivity market, and we're going to release a platform called Office. And they were really worried about their new plans to introduce a product called Word. And they go, if we're going to introduce a world-class word processor, I have to find the heaviest professional users to really adopt it. Because the casual user, and they sell enterprise licenses, and everyone spends a lot with them. So I got invited up, and they said, would you be interested in building what you did for WordPerfect, but for Microsoft? Isn't this like Gabe's story with Preemptive? Isn't that what happened, Gabe? Yeah, we shared a lot of early day stories as we were both flying out to Seattle. So the bottom line is, he then said, let me introduce you who is the product manager, and he walked me, and they only had the 6 buildings in Redmond, 1 through 6, now there's hundreds of buildings, and he introduced me to a woman sitting in the cube. He goes, you're going to work with Melinda French. They hadn't started dating yet. That's obviously who Melinda French Gates now. So I think I'm very proud of a Plain Dealer article. Wait a second, now I got the date, because it was a Plain Dealer of 1989. Okay. There's a business article in the business section with my picture sitting with a box on the desk, and a really beautiful quote from Melinda French saying how they're very excited to be working with Cleveland-based OverDrive and a little of that story.
So you took an investment from Bill Gates and Melinda French in Microsoft.
Well, the investment didn't really come then.
Okay.
That's when we started a partnership. Okay. And we built this series of products. And while that was going on, we started to, and it's also a byproduct of the way Microsoft operates. For those that have done business with Microsoft, you'll be working on a project for a year and then find out everyone that you dealt with is now being transferred to a completely different business unit and division. It's just kind of was their playbook in the 90s. But what happened was the guys that I had built all this product with were now in networking or with, it kind of opened up now relationships that we were enjoying throughout the company. So about 3-4 years later, when Palm introduced the Palm Pilot, Apple had the Newton, we were seeing the early days of PDAs. Microsoft said, well, what about us? We need to have everyone, using a mobile OS. So I got introduced to the Windows CE. Everyone remember what Windows CE is? Windows Compact Edition, a very thin, light OS for all of the mobile apps, smartphone, and smart products. And it was then that they said, if we are going to release Microsoft OS built, and they did, they wound up doing deals with Sony, Giornata, dozens of products. There was this platform called the Pocket PC. So it was then they said, now we want to get everybody into books and reading, because reading on the screen or audiobook. And it was around that initiative that they then approached us and made a $5 million preferred A investment. And prior to that, it was all originally friends and family, doctors and dentists. The next set of chapters, I'm waiting for the statute of limitations to run before I write my book, The 101 Ways I Made Payroll. But, I had done a variety of entrepreneurial, fundraising to kind of keep the doors open and keep things moving forward. But then Microsoft came in, and we dedicated a lot of time for that.
And I think that story probably resonates with many of the entrepreneurs in this audience, as you had to scrap from the beginning to the point where you can get that first professional round. So you get this professional round of funding, and then a couple years later, you decide you don't want it.
Correct. We still today, we have an amazing relationship with Microsoft. They were the first corporate library. OverDrive sells, we are a supplier to our nation's public libraries, university and academic libraries, corporate libraries, special libraries. We're in 50,000 K-12 schools, about 50% of all the schools in the US. But we also do that globally. But in the Microsoft Corporation was the very first corporate library 20 years ago. Steve Ballmer and Bill Gates wanted every employee to have at any time all of those coding books, those IT books, cybersecurity books. And so we've had that ongoing relationship. But as our business was continuing to grow, as I was beginning to see that we were on a flight plan where our top line numbers, our earnings, I had no debt, but on my balance sheet, I had this preferred. So about 4 or 5 years after that investment, I went back to Treasury at Microsoft and said, we'd like to buy you out. And they were confused. They said during the year that we invested in OverDrive, at the start, they were seeing the platforms. They were fighting for the mobile platform. They invested in 1,000 companies, so these pocket PCs and mobile OSs. Let's face it, if you bring a platform and there's no games and there's no world-class apps, you got nothing. So they said that year we invested in 1,000 companies. 99% of them are out of business. And we've never had anybody come to us and say, thank you, here's your money back with your dividend. They said, we don't know how to process this. I said, figure it out. So the bottom line is, we did pay back Microsoft so I can get back to a pure common cap table and debt-free and no preferreds. So as we continued to scale and grow, by the time it came time where myself and my founders were going to take in the next round of real professional money, that at least the valuation was of a suitable note. And even on that first round, I rolled over. But that's the reason I was glad that we took out Microsoft, because it also, I never had to worry about first rights of refusal or competition if Google Ventures or, Apple wanted to invest in us, so it just made our cap table clean.
So it made the cap table clean, and I'm going to forward the story a little bit here. So then you picked up private investment again from Insight Venture Partners. That was your first
kind of the real
financial
smart money,
investor, right? Venture
right.
investor. They traded you up to a Japanese.
In 2010, we sold a majority of the business to Insight Venture in New York. Great partners, 4 years. Yep. By year 4, I could kind of tell, they were ready to do the next step of their playbook. So we were fortunate enough to have a process. And all of these were processes where I had a lot of agency in controlling the process. And that's because we were debt-free. We were profitable. We had so many desirable, we were very attractive, but we could control each stage of this process, almost kind of narrow down who we wanted to be our partners, do as much due diligence on them and our culture. So we did Insight, they were great, but we then exited in 2015. The process yielded a strategic buyer, which is Rakuten, the global e-commerce system headquartered in Tokyo. You see Rakuten here in the US, it used to be Ebates. They bought the Ebates reward business, rebranded Rakuten. But HQ now is Tokyo, and they made me an executive officer of the parent, the public Japanese company. And they are, like $15 billion e-commerce giant that dominates in Japan. It's them and Amazon. And Rakuten is a global company with media companies, e-commerce globally. 4 years plus ago, after being a member of a Rakuten portfolio of their North American companies, we were able to help Rakuten and all of our partners achieve some success and value, but we wound up trading again. And I was very fortunate that the process that we went through, and it's all a process, investment bankers, they create kind of a small auction bidding process, but you can do it under your own terms, wound up resulting in a sale. We signed Christmas 2019 and closed in 2020 with KKR. So now we are a portfolio company of the North American, one of the KKR funds. Right. And headquarters, at least headquarters is here, but it's been a wonderful partnership with our leadership at KKR.
And for those of you that don't know KKR, it's probably one of the largest private equity groups on the planet, right? Obviously a blue chip private equity group that you've got as backers. So let's talk about, you've built this business, obviously, from that founding and the pivots along the way through these funding leaps. You've got a global business, as you said. Right. You're in 115 countries. You're still developing new platforms for content that you're continuing to digitize and bring to both the consumer as well as the business audience. Lessons along the way, wisdom that you want to pass along to entrepreneurs that are still on their journey path. You've got a list.
Well,
list of lessons.
The lessons come every day.
Yeah.
And they come at every meeting. So the most important lesson is be present. It's so hard to be present. It means that I don't read my email during the day, and it pisses off a lot of people that I don't respond to who think they need some affirmation that they sent me a text or a message. The best lesson I learned is be present in every meeting and really realize that that other person in that room is going to make you smarter, more successful, and give you the answer for whatever it is that you're in that room with that person for. So I didn't write that down, but I have to constantly remind myself that every conversation and every meeting I have, it may be the one and only time that I'm with that person on that topic, considering whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So this is just something I'm trying to be much more mindful. I think everyone knows, if you're not familiar with OverDrive, you may be familiar with a software product called Libby. The app is free and the book's free. You can get it from your library. So the Libby app, as a result of being in the book business and dealing with all the suppliers and authors and publishers, and we do have every book, I am really fortunate that I have access to every self-help book, even before they are published. So I am kind of a junkie on trying to figure out, how should I be more mindful? Let's face it, we are in, I believe in science.
Right.
I'm about to publish, I get to interview a lot of authors, and our company publishes a lot of podcasts and author events, and it's just what we do at libraries and book events. But I had the great pleasure of learning just a month or two ago I knew Albert Ratner, 96-year-old emeritus co-chair of Forest City Enterprise. With Dr. Michael Roizen, the chief wellness officer of Cleveland Clinic, they co-authored a book on longevity. It's called The Great Age Reboot. Albert, real estate, Forest City, writing a science book on the science of long living and science of longevity. Well, then a month later, I'm in an event. I'm friends with the director, the chief librarian at Brooklyn Public Library, Linda Johnson. Second marriage is to Bruce Ratner, the 80-year-old billionaire real estate developer in New York, of Forest City Ratner, who built the Barclays Center, the New York Times building. And then Bruce says, I just published a book on early detection of cancer. I'm going, what? How do we have these two Forest City first cousins? One's 80, one's 97 today, I think. And they're now dedicating themselves to the science. So I interviewed them. I'm going to be publishing a podcast. But the lessons along the way came from Albert. The lessons along the way came from Bruce. And it's the stories that are in these books. And it's the wisdom and the guidance that the authors want to tell you. But knowing you might ask that, I got to deliver one or two.
Okay, deliver what?
One or two.
Go ahead.
Don't believe your own PR. I love great headlines. I want that headline that pops. I want that sex and sizzle. I want that subhead. Jen Lightman, our chief marketing officer. How do I get them to click on it? How do I get them, how do you get top of the funnel, the click through, the open? But once you get all that press release and you've got your brochures for your trade show, don't read them. Don't read or believe your own product. Don't believe your own press. What you really have to do is say to yourself, it doesn't matter even if I did win the business or have this meeting. Every day with every account and relationship, what do I need to do to put myself in the position to earn the right to win? A lot of the startups, it's not only staying humble. If I need some help on a sales call, I now have George Roberts or Henry Kravis, who both personally offered to me. They're in their mid-80s, but they show up every day. Henry in New York, and George is out of Atherton, so he's in their West Coast office. They say, you need me to go on the sales call, Steve? Can I help open up an account? It's
amazing.
These are the two founders of KKR with over $600 billion under management. I think that they are managing more sovereign wealth for foreign nations than others. So it's not what you've done today. It's not even what I did, or look at this KPR. We hit our KPR, our OKRs. We made our quotas. It doesn't really matter. You have to earn the right tomorrow and the day after that. And I'll tell you, only because I've been to a lot of conferences this calendar year already. I was at ASU GSV. So as you know, ASU GSV is a very big tech conference in San Diego this year. OverDrive, over the last decade, has invested millions in a concept that we believe we can achieve. We believe that with technology, science, and leadership by professionals, we can change the way students learn how to read. We could change the literacy outcomes of all readers. We can make a difference on how access to a lesson plan, curriculum, assigned or self-selected reading produces more understanding. And we are on this mission for 10 years. But during COVID, the whole private equity world threw billions, maybe $1 trillion towards EdTech. So the word EdTech, it's like ebooks in the early 90s they were investing in, and by the time it was 2000, ebook was a dirty word and the dot-com crash. EdTech is in that space right now. I know that dozens of PE funds have poured tens of billions of dollars into the promise that when COVID happened Third week of March 2020, every student in the nation became a distant learner. Every school became a virtual school. Everyone thought over that next 12, 18 months, there would be this, tens of millions of dollars of investments by major districts in digital content. The result is it didn't happen. And so the other piece of advice is, when I attended several sessions on AI and EdTech at that event, the one-word takeaway for anyone trying to grow, fund, and be successful was efficacy. Efficacy. That's a pretty good word. Mm-hmm. It is the shortcut for it doesn't matter that your product works. It doesn't matter that it's cool looking. It could be the shiniest thing that you love to show off. But if it doesn't deliver valuable results that are the reason they put the budget in, they put the money in for a specific outcome. They want, in my case, I'm able to achieve one thing. You put our Sora student reading app into your district and follow the instructions of my educators and school librarians and coaches, I will almost guarantee your students will spend more minutes reading books. Why? Because we're tracking it. We know. Yeah. And you can put it in some classrooms and don't give it to another classroom, and then you tell me what happened. We know that if we introduce access to books and reading, and not just what they're forced to read, but things that the kids want to read, the things they're interested in, if we know that we can adapt the content and make it engaging and understand that everyone reads or learns in a different way. So the one word is efficacy. Understand, and connected to that is, and the real thing I'll tell you is from 15 years of thinking this is it, from the late 80s to almost 2000. I had 15 times I came in the lawyer and go, this is it, we signed, this is it. It wasn't it. It wasn't it. This is it. We are going to provide the first retail download digital bookstore for the second largest bookstore chain in the country. We signed Borders. Well, that wasn't it. This is it. We just signed to put our little ebook app on 1 billion smartphones, the single largest mobile phone on planet Earth. We're going to be in all the Nokia phones. That was a month before the iPhone came out. This is it. We're now going to be on the #1 business PDA platform. We're on BlackBerry. We're not allowed to name a product that has a fruit name in it after wasting 2 years building a BlackBerry app. Yeah, I'm at RimWorld in Toronto. Yay. So the bottom line is research in motion. That's what that was for.
Right.
The bottom line is don't believe even if your stuff works, looks good, shows well in the trade show booth, and you got the best highlight reel. Solve a pain point. Yeah. Solving a pain point will guarantee you love, success, and contract renewal. The shiny things that are cool are fads. Budget cycles come and go. We liked it, but now something shinier has caught their attention. Find a pain point, solve a pain point. And those are the most important things that you can then know that if you deliver value on improving a challenge in their workflows, now you have a potential partnership. They invite you in, they share with you how you're going to keep improving, what APIs they need, and let's keep going.
So thank you for that, Steve. I'm going to maybe just summarize, and I'm going to ask you for a closing comment. So, be present. Right? Take advantage of who's in front of you and listen and learn. Don't believe your own hype. Earn the right every single moment for that next thing. And then efficacy. Right? Solve a real pain point for a customer. That's how you're going to succeed. Now, through all of this, the other thing that's inspired me, especially the stories that you've left at the end, is you've always had a strong sense of mission. Right? It wasn't just about business. It wasn't just about recurring revenue. There's also this broader social mission. You're organized, if I understand correctly, as a B Corp, which is unusual.
Right.
You're one of the early B Corps out there. Talk about how you maintain that commitment to mission in a company as you continue to scale, both in terms of employees, customer relationships, private equity partners, but you still have that incredible firm commitment to the mission that drives you and drives your associates. How did you keep that going through all this
Well, thank you.
Journey.
What became an enormous awakening for me personally was when I was struggling during the dot-com period, when we saw all of these high-flying websites and, early ebook things one by one, just go away like dust. Giant plans, multiple years of integrations. I was very fortunate that Steve Potash said, you know all the publishers, no one can put a book on the screen better than you. Why don't you go talk to some librarians? So Lori in 2001 suggested, why don't you go to an American Library Association annual trade show, stand in the booth, talk to some librarians. Maybe you could build an ebook thing for libraries, because she was already a librarian working at Case Western Reserve Law School Library. I did that. When I was so fortunate to get connected, and I'll shortcut the story, when we were invited in by Cleveland Public Library into a project in '02 to try and see if we could develop a popular, easy-to-use, download ebook system where the librarians could cull and curate merchandise, where patrons could use their existing barcodes and library cards. We then started to immerse ourselves in what the role and the service and the value of the public library is. Within a year or two, when we launched in '03 with Cleveland Public, and we were then invited into New York Public Library, Toronto Public Library, the National Library of Singapore. I'll never forget when I signed San Jose Public Library, the heart of Silicon Valley. That was our first California library. I said, our responsibility now to our team is, those lions, fortitude and fortitude. What's the other lion name? Patience and fortitude, I think, are the two lion names out front of the Schwartzman Library in Fifth Avenue. We are responsible for their brand, their reputation. These librarians, these executive national world leaders are entrusting their patrons, their brand with us. We need to be held to the highest degree of standard as if we are public librarians. We need to just realize we are now not working for a for-profit. This is not only nonprofit, this is a safety net of essential services. This is a safety net. When you have nowhere to go, you go to the library. If you don't have a meal, you go to the library. You come out of a bad doctor visit, don't understand it, you're there. And the work of the public library, we started to embrace our mission. And it was that we said, when I said you have to earn the right to win, if you're going to get, in the case that we do, 90+% of our revenue comes from federal, regional, state, county, foreign governments, the military, Library of Congress. How do we deserve to be entrusted with that? We've been working for the Department of Defense, supplying every military. You could be in a nuclear submarine and you can download the Commandant's War securely anywhere in the world. How do we earn that trust? So I came back. I was at a philanthropy seminar put on by Morgan Stanley. It was in New York about a decade ago when I first learned about the Certified B Corporation movement. And it was started by a group of for-profit businesses. Some of the earliest B Corps were Patagonia, Etsy, Ben and Jerry. Why can't we create a culture where for-profit companies can show that they are dedicated to serving the environment, the stakeholders that they all serve, their local community? And that's when I learned about the Certified B movement. And we then, as I've done many things, she's not here, but we have an amazing Chief Operating Officer, Lori Franklin. I come back to her and I say, this looks really worthwhile. It looks like it would make us a better company. Because to qualify, you have to go through a very expensive audit process, 6 figures to go through the first step. It's almost like when you get a LEED certified building, you get so many points, this insulation, saving and doing, environmental friendly. There's 5 different categories that you have to achieve. And these things are in transparency in all of your dealings. Good for the environment, highest degree of ethics and moral practices, and a lot of these other value propositions, and even the process of becoming Certified B, which we became. And now we get occasional audits, but it's been an amazing, valuable exercise and something we're very proud of. But we try to go beyond that. We try and inspire a culture of giving back, because just like when those nurses and those healthcare workers were the front lines and everyone was trying to find masks, we're behind the front lines of those school teachers, those public librarians who are in the urban markets, who are in the rural, who are on the Indian reservations, who are trying to bring access to health and education and support for their children and their careers. So we think we have an extraordinarily we're a procurement partner, we're a supply chain partner to the knowledge industry. We want to earn the right to be that.
Well, please join me in thanking Steve Potash for sharing his story and sharing his wisdom.
Thank you.